Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark. And in this episode, I'm joined by co-hosts Phil Lindsay and Chris Mueller. From the world of comic books comes one of the most popular Marvel superheroes of all time, a shadowy figure dealing out vengeance under the watchful eye of an Egyptian god, while also struggling to balance the different personalities that threaten to tear him apart. We're talking about Moon Knight. Moon Knight is a series based on the character appearing in Marvel Comics. The series is a Disney Plus original and was created by Jeremy Slater, produced by Peter Cameron, and is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The original Moon Knight was created by Doug Minch and Don Perlin and first debuted in Werewolf by Night issue number 32 in August of 1975. Moon Knight tells the story of Mark Spector, a mercenary who suffers from dissociative identity disorder. Spector is actually just one of three personalities, with the second being Stephen Grant, who works in a museum gift shop. Spector and Grant are two entirely different personalities, with Mark being the brazen adventurer and Grant being the timid innocent trapped in a life he doesn't understand. The series primarily focuses on Grant at the beginning, with Spector eventually coming out to the forefront. Spector's superhero alter ego soon comes into play as Moon Knight takes center stage very early on. Moon Knight is the physical manifestation of the ancient Egyptian god Khonshu, who seeks to punish those that do evil. Khonshu uses Spector as his avatar, granting Mark superhuman powers and abilities. The main antagonist of the story is Arthur Harrow, a cult leader obsessed with the Egyptian god Ammit, who seeks to punish those who will commit crimes in the future. Harrow, a former avatar for Khonshu, wants to bring justice to the earth by releasing Ammit, which eventually causes a war to erupt between the gods. As Spector and Grant find a way to coexist, a third personality, Jake Lockley, eventually comes to the forefront, putting a whole new spin on the character and the series. Moon Knight was well received by critics and fans alike. Though the series was left open-ended, it will reportedly not return for a second season and was in fact a limited series, though that has yet to be fully confirmed by Marvel Studios. Thanks to the layered storytelling, the rich performances, and the special effects, Moon Knight is regarded by many fans as one of the finest additions to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's the lowdown on Moon Knight. It's the same thing every time. We've heard that a bunch as Marvel fans over the years. With the great, what I would deem to be great Marvel Cinematic Universe. And yes, I'm a fan, kids. Never made a secret about it. Not going to start now, okay? It's how it is. But yes, we cover Marvel a lot here on the show. We talk about it a lot. We will continue to cover it because, yes, it's one of the 6 M's, baby. It's how we roll. But you know one of the criticisms we've heard? For a long time now, it's the same thing every time. It's the Marvel formula. Tom, it's the Marvel formula, right? I know you've heard it. We've all heard it. These films follow the same form. It's amazing how a lot of times when people say this, they're the directors whose films aren't making money. Interesting how that happens. That's another conversation for another time. However, low grade shade here from the 6M. I love Marvel. I'm not going to lie. But here's the thing. I loved Marvel before they ever became a hit in the theaters. Okay, I'm a lifelong comic book guy. It's just who I is. So yeah, I'm in the bag for the MCU. But yeah, we've had to listen to, and listen, they get the A-list actors, they get unknown actors, they get everybody in between. Anybody who's anybody wants to be in a Marvel film because they're just that good. They treat their people right. You make a ton of money, and you get to be in really cool movies that your kids get to see. What's not to like? And plus, you have a nation of fans adoring your every move. Come on, man. What's not to love? Be real about it, all right? But the biggest criticism, it's the same movie every time, Tom. It's the Marvel formula. So sick of hearing it. So as it pertains to Moon Knight, in my opinion, strays very far from its typical Marvel. No, not in the slightest. In fact, after a 6-episode series, which may or may not be only one season of this show, who knows? We'll get into that in a bit. This is, for my money, one of the most different Marvel things to ever come to life. One of the most different properties that Marvel's ever brought to life in any medium. I think it's good. I think it's trippy. I think it's different. It's not your typical Marvel fare. To say the least, it's not. And we got a lot to get into here today, folks, but a lot of ground to cover. So Chris, we're going to start with you. What is your impression right out of the gate about Moon Knight? What do you think, just sort of your overall opinion, just kicking this thing off today?
I would definitely say that it's not my favorite Marvel series, but it's still good. Uh, I mean, I'd probably give it honestly like a strong B plus to an A minus, somewhere in there. There was a couple of things about the finale that I think fell a bit short, but other than that, I really liked the performances, especially Oscar Isaac. And the finale I think was one of the strongest for him because it allowed him to do a few things that were very interesting to me. But yeah, I think it was one of those shows that honestly, it's one of the rare cases where I would say this needed more episodes. Like normally the 6 episode range feels right. Like I think Falcon and Winter Soldier was perfectly paced at 6. Same thing for Loki. And this one at the end, I was like, there's a few things that I want them to do more of. And I don't know if I'm even going to get that now because they're pretty much saying there's no season 2. So we don't know where he's going to pop up next, if he'll get his own movie, which I don't know. I kind of doubt. But at the same time, they could always make it a 2-hander with him and somebody else. So who knows?
Yeah. I didn't know what your reaction was going to be because the three of us haven't spoke about this independently or I don't think at all since this thing started. We've all been fairly busy over the past several weeks. So I'm interested. I was interested to see what you said. And plus, I'm with you on a lot of things you said, honestly. And I was kind of afraid I'd be the guy saying, "Oh, great, I'm the only one here that was let down by the end." Phil, let me hit you on this. What's your overall take of the show? And before we get too deep in the weeds, did you have the same reaction at the end as Chris did?
I enjoyed the show. I liked the finale, but I did feel like, particularly the last 2 episodes were kind of rushed. I thought they had a really good cliffhanger at the end of episode 4, and I feel like they could have let that hang in the air for a little bit longer, and they kind of undid it right away and rushed into the climax of the season. But other than that, I enjoyed most of it. I enjoyed most of the performances. The special effects were a lot better than I thought they would look for a TV show. I don't know. I don't think that they've really missed with any of the Disney Plus shows yet.
Yeah. Same here. For me, Oscar Isaac is the primary selling point of this entire show. I was not crazy familiar with him before the Star Wars franchise. So now the work he did in the Star Wars franchise, or does, I guess, hopefully in the future here at some point.
Man, if you have not seen it, please go watch Deus Ex Machina, because it is just such a good movie. Ex Machina, I'm sorry. That is the name of the movie.
I have seen it.
Such a good movie.
I forgot all about that flick. Yeah. Deeply psychological, that film. It's crazy. It's really good, though. You're right. I forgot all about that. Man, he deserves all the awards for Moon Knight. If he doesn't get, it's like I'm saying the same thing about another show I'm watching right now, but I'm telling you, if he doesn't get something from this, there's no justice on the planet, because this guy is phenomenal. I mean, Chris, this is unlike any other Marvel character. I mean, if give me enough time, I maybe could come up with somebody, but not your typical hero. And we hear that, well, he's not your typical hero. He's really not. Like he didn't ask for any of this, as most heroes in the Marvel universe. This is the same story there, right? Because like none of them asked for this, but that's been the case in the books for years. But man, I guess that's why it feels so much different, is that this guy is just genuinely a great actor. And again, this character didn't ask for any of this stuff to be thrust upon him. But man, he's the primary drawing point of this whole series, isn't he?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Oscar Isaac is one of those like in demand guys in Hollywood. I mean, he just did Dune, which, kind of a mixed reaction based on what I've seen, but I think a lot of people generally thought it was good. X-Men Apocalypse was what it was. He seemed like he had fun.
I totally forgot that one too.
But yeah, like this was really interesting to me, because one of the things that I think a lot of people are going to overlook is how amazing of a job he did at changing his body language and facial expressions for each personality. And it comes down to a simple thing as the scene that's really close to the end of the finale, when he's basically won, but you jump back to the little insane asylum scene for a second, and he's talking to Harrow again before he kind of turns the table on him. And it's Steven talking to him, and he goes, "Do you believe in Amit and Khonshu?" And Harrow says no. And before he responds again, you can already tell it's going to be Mark who responds just by the way he makes his face look. And it was such like a subtle little detail that I picked up on the second time I watched it. I'm like, man, that was really good. Because like I did know right away, subconsciously, I'm like, it's going to be Mark's voice. So yeah, he did a fantastic job throughout the show, I think.
What during those scenes when he was like dead or heading to the next world or whatever, did you guys get I watched it through those whole scenes. Did you guys get like the feeling that there was two different actors in that hallway, like in those rooms together? Because I totally didn't even think, oh, that's still Oscar Isaac. I was so absorbed into his performance. I had to remind myself, wait, that's not two actors in that room. Did that happen to you guys on this?
Yeah, he did a few things in this show where I was like, he is just like embodying a completely different person several times.
Yeah.
Especially like the first few episodes where we only see Steven at first. And so when we first see Mark, he's so different from the way he walks, the way he talks, everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing the job that this guy does. One of the first things that we heard, I'm sure everybody out there is, if you're a fan of this stuff, you probably know the story. One of the first things I heard personally about this as it was coming on the air was that he did not sign a multi-year deal. He didn't sign the Marvel deal, which if you sign in 2022, you're secured to like 2029 or something. It's amazing how many appearances, how many movies / TV shows / streaming service, whatever. But he chose not to sign that. I can't, even though, as I said, I'm in the bag for this stuff, I can't fault him, Chris, for not wanting to, commit himself to this role for X number of years in a row. But that certainly didn't affect his performance. Did you have any sort of, feeling about that one way or the other coming in? Did you think, well, man, this is going to be a one-off. We're just never going to see this guy again?
I didn't really think too much of it, to be honest. I just kind of figured if Marvel found an interesting way to use him again, he'd probably return. And he's been very open about the fact that he loved playing both sides of this character and he would love to revisit it in the future in some way. So I think it was smart on his part. And I'm glad that Marvel gave him the option to do that, because you normally would think they want this guy for 6-7 years minimum. So it's interesting to see what happens next. This might be something we see a little more often if they start to do stuff with more of the quote unquote obscure characters, because Moon Knight's not as mainstream as a lot of these characters we've seen adapted.
I have a buddy that I've known for years, and I'm sure he was over the moon, no pun intended. He was the guy for years that whenever we talked about who we'd like to see on the big screen, he always said Moon Knight. Every time that was his go-to guy. Every single time. Huge fan of Moon Knight. Even before the character actually became like really popular in the books, he loved the character. I feel this idea that, well, Moon Knight is Marvel's Batman. I mean, just because the guy is a dark and shadowy figure, well, he's Batman. I mean, I don't know how much of that I buy into. Any real comparisons here? Any parallels? To me, I'm watching this. I'm like, this is the farthest thing from Batman I've ever seen in my life.
I don't really see the comparisons to Batman. I think that it's kind of passe to say that he's Marvel's Batman. I feel like, if anything, there were a lot of things watching this that I was like, boy, why hasn't DC gone and done something with like Egyptian lore, like Dr. Fate or one of those mystical characters yet?
I bet they do now.
Yeah, I feel like it's too late now because I feel like you could have done a lot of the duality stuff with Dr. Fate in particular.
Sure.
And I've been begging for a Dr. Fate movie for years. Excuse me. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like they dropped the ball. But I don't know. I feel like Moon Knight is so different because he's the only character that I know of in comics that has DID.
Yeah, very true. Very true. That does set him apart. I love the way they handle that through the show, and especially with the reveal of what. And we're going to have to get into this because I got a lot of questions about what is actually going on when he's in front of the so-called doctor. Let's run this down because I don't want us to lose where we are here. But of course, Oscar Isaac is portraying Mark Spector, who was the original Moon Knight kids, in case you're taking notes. So yeah, that's who we're talking about here, lead character, but he's also Stephen Grant. And as we come to find out at the very end, he's Jake Lockley as well. So we'll get there. And again, we can't say enough great things about him, but the heavy of this series is Ethan Hawke as Arthur Harrow. All right. So I want everybody to give me your theories. And if there's a right answer, I'd love to know who's got the right answer. This whole thing of suddenly Arthur Harrow is a psychiatrist or the psychologist, whatever, in this mental institution. And, Mark's dead, but he's not dead. Is this purgatory? Is this hell? Chris, what's your theory? What is going on here? What do you understand to be what's happening here?
Well, I mean, Towerette kind of explained it. She said it was like a transitional plane before the field of reeds or wherever, the sand, if that's where they end up. And I think she'd even mentioned, like, I've never seen it manifest as a mental ward before, but, there's a first time for everything.
Right.
And she also implied that they hadn't had anybody come through that part of the afterlife in quite a while, which, like, clearly Layla's father had because Towerette knew him. But I found that to be like an interesting little detail that they just never expounded upon. Like, why? Like, there's plenty of Egyptians. I'm sure some of them still hold on to like old school beliefs just because there's people everywhere with old school beliefs. So I don't know. That was a weird detail to me, but yeah, it just felt like it was the transitional thing. Like, this is where we decide. It's like it's the equivalent of the gates of heaven in Christian mythology. It's you're being judged by, was it St. Peter or whatever? Like, that's who Towerette is, I guess, in Egyptian lore.
And I like when she said all that, I got it. But then the more it kept happening, I started thinking, okay, is that what this is? Or is this like a metaphor for, he's trapped in his own mind? And like, we've got two personalities trapped in one body. Is this a duality of man? I guess I started taking a lot deeper than maybe what they meant it to be. I don't know. But I guess I was searching for a little bit more deeper meaning.
I think it was a bit of both, though. Like, it was his mind manifesting what he saw, but it was part of the afterlife. It's just his mind dictates what that is.
Sure.
But then, of course, once they got out on the boat, it was clear that they were in the normal. What was it? The duat? Is that what they called it?
I think so.
But she did also mention the ancestral plane from Black Panther. So, like,
she did. Wasn't that awesome?
Yeah, like, this is one afterlife. You should see the ancestral plane. It's beautiful. Like, so that to me established that, okay, this is actually happening, and this is just a different. So it seems like Marvel is basically saying whatever your beliefs are, that's the afterlife you end up in.
I love that Black Panther reference because I was watching this with my wife and it hit and I was like, oh,
I mean, closest thing we got to an Easter egg for any other mentions, because this show really feels removed from the mainline MCU. Doesn't it? Like, we got no cameos. They weren't dropping names like Thor and Captain America left and right.
Yeah. You know what's funny? I got to be honest with you guys, that I didn't bump into that at all. Like, not one time did I bump into that, but now that you mention it, no, it is fairly independent.
I mean, yeah, they could basically, at some point, if they decided to, they could treat this like Inhumans and be like, it never happened, guys.
Well, maybe that's a good thing because, you know, I don't know. At least for Inhumans anyway. Yeah, like I said, I don't want to get too wrapped up in the afterlife purgatory thing, what's going on there. And I don't want us to not talk about Ethan Hawke. Freaking Ethan Hawke, man. Phil, we have, you and I, many different episodes of the 6M talking about why Marvel is so good at what they do. And this is to the books. This is not necessarily just to the movies, kids. But the hero that didn't ask for this and doesn't really want it, and the villain who you kind of see where he's coming from, but he's still kind of bad, and then maybe he's really bad, but you kind of understand. Like, I don't know where Ethan Hawke's character falls here for you, but man, in the last episode when he's basically accepting death, I'm like, well, this isn't like any heel I've ever seen where he's suddenly a coward and tries to run from the thing he was trying to resurrect. What's your overall take on this character? Did it work all the way through for you? Did it fall flat in the end? Because for me personally, I kind of lost touch with him in the last episode, where maybe I shouldn't have. What do you think, Phil?
I thought he was a great character. I thought he had the best one-liners for the entire series. I really thought the stuff in the first episode was interesting. Him breaking up the glass and putting it in his sandals.
It's good.
He just has so many good one lines, man. Like I think the best line of the series is him in the last episode when Mark is laying in that water, quote unquote dead, and he said, "Yeah, sometimes you have to see the light of death to see reality."
It's great. He's amazing. His performance next to Oscar Isaac. I mean, talk about two guys that share the scene very well together, and one doesn't upstage the other at all. It's almost like they're both competing for who can kill it. They're both so good. And the character worked for me, Chris, really pretty much through the whole thing. But that last episode, I don't know what it was, but I don't know what I expected, but I expected more of okay, wait a minute. Can we talk about this? I guess I'm just used to villains being, I don't know, at some point, well, it's not what I bargained for. I'm in over my head, but that never really happened with him at all. I mean, he was ready to go to the end, the bitter end.
I mean, he was one of those, he was a true believer in his cause. So he always felt like, to me, he's very similar to Zemo. Like, he thinks his cause is righteous.
Very good.
And he doesn't think that doing a couple of bad things are that bad if the ends justify the means. He's one of those kind of characters to me. So I actually really liked the fact that as soon as Amit was out, she's like, your scales are imbalanced. He's like, I know, I thought this would fix it. It didn't. If you want to kill me, I'm down for that. Let's go. And like, as soon as he kind of submitted there, I was like, that doesn't feel like a manipulative thing to me. I don't think he's trying to manipulate Amit. I think he's actually a true believer. And if Amit at that point had said, I judge you, you're going to die now, I think he would have been fine with that.
Yeah, his whole goal was to free Amit. He didn't really care if she used him or not, because in his mind, she had already used him by freeing her. Man, his monologue after what's the moon guy's name? Mama Drum.
Khonshu.
After Khonshu was put back in his shopti, and he's monologuing him, and he's saying, I want you to know that you caused all of this, and all the torment that you caused on me will lead to my ultimate triumph. It's just such a good speech. It's like he hasn't even done anything to know that he's won yet, but he's just so sure of himself.
Yeah, it was a nice little moment, and getting to see him and Khonshu interact a couple of times was fun, because finding out he was his like older avatar was something I didn't expect when I first started watching the series.
Yeah,
I didn't see that coming either at all. Were you guys as disappointed as I was that we didn't get a flashback of that?
Not Not
I think
really.
that would have been cool to see.
I feel like we came away from this really understanding that Khonshu is really the real big bad of the show.
But again,
really
I
the
think
bad guy of the show.
I think Khonshu is also similar to Harrow in that like he thinks what he's doing is right, and to him, really, he thinks he's so much better than Amit. But really, both of them are judging people, and somehow Amit has this foresight of knowing if somebody will do something terrible. But like, he's using a mercenary to just go straight up murder people, whereas Amit was just kind of like, all right, I'm going to zap your soul out of your body. They probably didn't feel a thing. So, yeah, there's big differences between the two, but it's an interesting dichotomy. And it was kind of cool when Amit was like almost offering him a spot at her side during the fight. That it was interesting to me.
Yeah.
And Khonshu's thing was like that he was giving people choice that she said, because it's something like we're the same. And he talked about you take away their choice. And I'm like, you're having people killed. How is that? What's the choice? Can you outrun the Moon Knight and maybe not get killed? What do you mean they have a choice?
Yeah, and you're enslaving somebody that's mentally unwell.
But I think he's talking about talking about the people that he's sending Moon Knight after. Like, he's only sending Moon Knight to take out people who've already committed atrocities, whereas Amit is judging people who, in a lot of ways, you could look at it as may or may not. Because even Steven kind of questioned that at some point. Like, how can you know? Like, I've had thoughts about killing my boss. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it. So, yeah, to me, that was about those people, not actually Mark. And Mark, obviously, he's using Mark, Steven, Jake, all of that. And it's kind of interesting when you go back, because I just rewatched the episode today, and he specifically says, I will release the two of you. Yeah. So Mark and Steven, but like he fully intended to always have Jake in his back pocket.
Yeah, but that's why, again, that line that Harold gives is just so good, because he knew the score with Khonshu the whole time, and he had been telling Mark the entire series, like, no, you cannot trust him. Like, he was like, he's a liar. At the end of the day, there will always be another lie. He said that. And he's right. Even the line of him saying, you know, sometimes you have to see the light of death to see reality. It's like, all right, well, you guys died to see the reality of the situation with you and Khonshu, but at the end of the day, you still don't see that there are other things he's not telling you guys.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, man. The Egyptian gods, none of them are really up to any kind of good at all. I mean, it's they're not really here to help anybody.
Here's what's interesting to me. In Marvel Comics, a lot of the quote-unquote gods are really beings that exist in like a different plane of reality in time and space. So they're almost more akin to aliens. But this seems to establish that no, these gods actually are involved in the afterlife. Whereas Thor, like, and you know, Valhalla may exist for all we know, but Thor isn't exactly living in the afterlife with these people as a god. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they start to define these different belief systems, which ones are just, you know, advanced alien races and which ones are actually deities.
To get meta with it, you could make the case that the way that human beings are perceiving things like their control over the afterlife is just our perception of life and death. And we're just they're just attributing those kind of things to whatever these deities, and they might still just be considered aliens, because it seems like at least all of the stuff in here has a connection to Bass, and that's how she knew about the ancestral plane and everything. So I can see that stuff being connected. Just like I noticed at some point when the gods used their power, it was always purple, like Black Panther's powers are.
Yeah.
Good call.
It's interesting how Marvel uses color to define certain powers. Like, Wanda's magic is always red. Doctor Strange's is always kind of a yellowish orange. Agatha's was a purplish. Now, the Infinity Stones each obviously had their own colors, and each color sort of went along with its attacks. So I don't know if that necessarily is significant at all, but it was kind of funny to see, like, I don't know, the big purple sky beam at the end. I was just like, we got to do another sky beam, guys. Come on.
Oh, very true. Very true. I love the idea. That, all right, Valhalla and all that, that's just a different plane. It's a different realm. It's a realm, kids. It's just a realm. But then there's actually gods that were on the planet Earth, and they were real gods, and people really prayed to them. They actually did stuff. Whereas, Valhalla and all that, and Asgard's just, well, it's a realm. And when they showed up on Earth, people didn't know what to make of them, so they just perceived them as gods. Well, yeah, okay, but then there's really gods. Like, yeah, I wonder if they'll ever be addressed in something in the future. And I don't. And then, like, where does the Eternals fit in? Like, oh, I don't know. It kind of gets mind-boggling after a while if you really think about it.
And they've addressed quite a few different lores now, because we've touched on Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Norse mythology, Egyptian mythology, Chinese mythology. It's really, and what's funny is they've really steered away from the overtly Christian characters.
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to go there.
Well, I mean, they're going to do something with Ghost Rider eventually.
Oh, sure.
And Ghost Rider is an
talk about heaven and hell.
Yeah, he's absolutely based on the Christian mythology. So it'll be interesting to see how they portray a devil if we ever get to see it.
I mean, well, Daredevil is canon now. So all of that stuff in the Daredevil series addresses Christianity in some way.
But that's more...
And I think we all know that
isn't that more just about his personal faith, though? Like, it doesn't address the fact of how it really works in the afterlife. That was more about Matt's internal struggle with his own Catholicism, I felt.
But it's really the only, to Phil's point, though, it really is the only property that's really, grabbed it head on, really. So,
and you have to with Daredevil, because being a Catholic is the reason he feels the guilt that he feels.
Yeah. I thought it was so fascinating, the episode that we see the stuff with him having the flashbacks, and they showed that Mark is Jewish, and I was like, they're doing all this Egyptian stuff, and Mark is Jewish. He's basically enslaved by an Egyptian god, and he's Jewish. It's kind of an interesting concept.
Well, there's a lot of overlap with those older mythologies, and there were a lot of Jewish people in Egypt for a long time, so he could have been descended from the Jews who were enslaved by the Egyptians. I don't know. What is Oscar Isaac in real life? Like, what is his nationality? I don't even know.
Oscar Isaac was born Guatemala.
Really?
Actually, yeah. Guatemala City, Guatemala.
Now that we're talking about this, I don't know if I know what his real accent sounds like. What does he sound like in real life?
I don't know. You just made me think of the Max character from Wonder Woman with that.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I saw one of the best takes this morning where somebody posted a picture of Wonder Woman in her golden armor and Layla in her armor, and they're like, Marvel wins. They did the golden winged armor way better. And I agree. I thought Layla looked awesome in her costume. And I guess she's supposed to be some obscure character that I've never heard of called the Scarlet Scarab, which in the comics was like totally different.
Yeah, but it's a villain in the comics.
Yeah, but that's what they're going with for her persona. Even though it was never really said in Moon Knight, like, I guess that's the official designation. And she did have that big scarab symbol on her chest plate for her armor.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they basically alluded to it several times. Her dad called her his little scarab.
Yeah. And a
few nice.
scarab was like one of the MacGuffins in the season. But we got to talk about her. I really thought that she did a good job holding her own with these two powerhouse actors, because I've never seen her in anything else. And after watching this show, now I kind of want to see other stuff she's in.
Yeah, she did do a phenomenal job, actually. May Calloway, I think, as Layla. Tough, tough, street smart. Won't take no for an answer. I mean, man, yeah, she's not exactly a damsel in distress here. She's freaking really, really good. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. And, anytime something like this hits, and it usually involves someone that you may have not be familiar with that hasn't really got much fame, usually they're going to go on to do something after this. So I wouldn't be surprised to see her in something bigger after this happens.
I think that's one of the big strengths of these Marvel TV shows is they have cast some incredible young women in these roles. Ravonna in Loki was awesome. The young girl in Falcon and Winter Soldier, the activist, she was great. I mean, obviously, WandaVision, we have Elizabeth Olsen, who was well established, but, then they bring in what's her face for Agatha. Why can't I think of her real name right now? That bothers me because I really like her.
Don't do that to me. Yeah.
But anyway, they've really brought in this set of great female characters that they can keep bringing back if they want to. Like, we're getting an Agatha series. So I really hope that if we get more Mark at any point, that Layla comes along as a package deal, because I think having the two of them as a superhero pair, almost like a twisted version of Hawk and Dove from DC, I think would be way more interesting than just another vigilante character like Moon Knight.
If you want to see a twisted version of Hawk and Dove from DC, just go watch the actual version of Hawk and Dove from DC, because they, that Titan show just made everybody dark and murderous and bloody and having sex with each other, and good Lord.
Do. Every time I hear the theme to Titans, by the way, I start doing Jeff's pelvic thrust, because it just reminds me, it just feels like it's just going to jump. It's just going to jump onto the Hardy Boys theme song.
Oh, man. That's good.
I never put that together, and now I'm never going to be able to hear it without putting that association to it.
Catherine Hahn is who you were thinking
Catherine Hahn, my God. She is just incredible. Like, every time she was on Parks and Rec, she stole every scene she was in. She's been great in every movie I've seen her in. Like, those Bad Moms movies weren't that great, but she's the funniest part.
I think the first thing I saw her in was Step Brothers, I think.
Oh, she is in that, isn't she?
She is, and that's the first time I saw her, yeah.
Yeah, she's great. She's been doing stuff, like, she's been in a lot of independent stuff and, little TV show roles, like, for a long time. So seeing her, like, get this big boost at the age she's at, which is rare in Hollywood for that to be the time you start to break out, is really cool, because she's a fantastic actress.
She is. We've also got, as the voice of Khonshu, F. Murray Abraham is freaking great. I mean, dude, I don't know if you could have got anybody. I don't know who else they were thinking of. There's no other choice. This guy is absolutely perfect. I mean, that voice, if he does not have a career in voice acting, he will now, because holy God, so good in this. I mean, he made that character as ridiculous as Khonshu looked, because he looked pretty darn ridiculous to me, in my opinion. Man, he made him menacing. He made him dangerous. He made him just, scary looking with those hollow eyes. I mean, dude, I thought he did great in this.
Yeah, I think he's great. I think the look of Khonshu that they took from the comics works. Man, especially in the mid credit scene where he's sitting in the car and he has the suit on, so good. Yeah, I have no complaints with anybody on this cast. It's such a strong cast.
And what do you think about him wearing the suit? Because whenever he manifested himself previously, why would he bother? Do you know what I'm saying? Why would he bother putting himself in a suit? Why would he shrink down? Why would he be in the car? Like, I mean, I get why he would be there is to confront, Harrow's character, but like, I found that very interesting. What if there's anything behind that? I mean, now we may never know, right, Chris? Who knows what's going to happen now?
He just like Steven's style.
Yeah, it's a nod to the Lemire run where they got that from. He's wearing a suit like that in the Lemire run.
Nice.
It's like all the stuff that Mark manifests in his brain where he's trying to get through each of his personas. It's all we find out in the comics that like Khonshu has been manipulating him his entire life. And I thought it very interesting when they did the flashback with him and his brother in that cave and he stepped on that bird skeleton. And I was like,
Yeah, I caught that too, actually.
Yeah, that was an interesting episode because it is not often in any media that it's the mother who's the abusive one. Like, there's really only a few prominent examples. So to make her like such a traumatizing part of his life was a very interesting choice for them to make.
That was tough. Those scenes were tough to watch. Like she was fantastic because I really was scared for that kid.
Man, when that little kid jumped into Steven for the first time and was like, look at my room, it's a mess. Mother will be so mad, and like starts cleaning up. Like that little kid did a great job.
He did.
Yeah.
So did Layla when Tauret was first sort of taking over her body and she's like jumping back and forth between herself and Tauret in that hallway as it's like collapsing. Yes. I thought that was a great scene because she was like just completely different body language, just like Oscar was for his two characters. She did a great job there.
Yeah. Yeah, all of that stuff with the flashbacks, man, it really makes you feel bad for Mark because he's had so much trauma in his life, and it makes you even feel more when you get to the point where he agrees to be Moon Knight, that it's just like, it's such a bittersweet moment. And even Steven in the background telling him like, no, he's been manipulating him. And Mark is still not even noticing it in that moment.
Did Stephen Grant get on anyone's nerves besides me in the first few times we saw him? Because he got it to me, and I loved him in the end. But to me, I was like, all right, that's enough. I want to see this guy punch somebody. Like I was anxious to see him start fighting back. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I thought that he was entertaining in the first episode, especially. Just the fact that he knew so much about Egyptian lore. I think that they did a lot of heavy lifting to get you to like him as a person, so that when all these other bad things start happening to him, it's like, oh man, that kind of sucks. Like I mean, him getting the date and then showing up to the date and then finding out that he showed up on the wrong day and him being like legitimately confused, like what happened?
Right.
I loved. He's at the dinner table and he's a vegan, so he's like just doesn't know how to order a steak. And then later on, when he's freaking out in that storage unit, he's like, hey, one piece of beef, and my whole brain shuts down. Like, I don't know why that made me laugh so hard, but it did.
I would have to imagine, without having done any, like, watching any interviews with any or anything like that, I would have to imagine that playing Steven was a little bit more challenging than playing Mark, if I had to guess.
Yeah, it seems like he definitely had to, especially for the body stuff. Again, I don't know what his real accent is, so if he's really got like a British sounding accent, that might have been just as easy for him as the American one. I don't know. But yeah, it was it was interesting to watch him, especially when he was both people in the same place at the same time. Like when he runs into Towerette for the first time and they both scream, the way they physically react in that moment is so different. It was great.
It is.
Yeah, I thought that twist at the end of episode 4 was really good.
Yeah, and then she just hi, like I like whoever they got for the voice of her, some actress. I saw an interview with her real short. She did a really good job. I liked the way she developed that character and emoted as her, because she said that she had a lot of control over how that character like came across on screen.
Antonia Salib.
She said that they basically allowed her to sort of dictate the character's tone.
She was great. I mean, and again, guys, I can't speak for everybody listening or anybody else out there, honestly, but who would think that you could take like a gigantic alligator, a gigantic hippo, and not only make them interesting, but you're not laughing the whole time you're looking at them. But man, it worked. The hippo thing was awesome.
Not to mention a giant bird skeleton dressed in mummy rags. Like, yeah, the special effects in this, I felt like they clearly saved until the final episode to do all of the big flashy stuff. And I think it probably benefited them because they had enough in the budget to do it one time real big. But yeah, it was interesting. The fight scene between Khonshu and Amit, like when they're fighting on the pyramid and stuff and kind of, jawing at each other back and forth. I thought that looked way better than I would have expected for one of these shows. Like that to me looked like probably about as good as it would have looked had they put that in a movie, honestly.
Very good.
I agree. Man, you said that Oscar did not sign a multi-deal, but he bought in. He did a lot of his own stunt for this thing. He learned a lot of fight choreography himself. I thought I remember I read that he was the guy that scouted Ethan Hawke for the role as well.
Ooh,
he did a lot for this series. He was all in.
Yeah, Ethan Hawke said that Oscar Isaac was the one who convinced him to take it. I actually saw part of that interview.
Ethan Hawke is. I'm fine circling back to him because he's freaking great. I didn't mean to just not sell his performance there or anything, but by the last episode, in my own personal opinion. But man, he's great.
He did a good job.
I love that he's part of the MCU.
He did a good job changing his voice just enough to sound really menacing, but it doesn't sound forced. It's not like a Christian Bale Batman where it's clearly an act. Like that just felt like a really world-weary, tired dude.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, don't bail on Bale here, man. Come on.
I mean, it is what it is. Everybody, like George Clooney was really the only one who didn't have a Batman voice.
Yeah. Yeah, Ethan Hawke's great. And I love that he's in the MCU, but I hate that he's now dead, apparently. And it's like, now it sucks. I mean, it's not like he can't come back in another role. They can do whatever they want. I mean, for goodness sake, Cap was originally the Human Torch. Let's don't forget that. So it's not like they can't come back and do something different. Have a product or a service that you want to get out into the world? Always wanted to try your hand at podcasting but don't know where to start? We've got you covered. Pod for Hire is a podcast production company that offers turnkey services to fit your needs. We produce your show from start to finish, allowing you the valuable time you require to focus on your established clients as well as prospective clients. We pride ourselves on delivering a top-notch product that will set your business apart from the rest and give your company the exposure it deserves. For more information, give us a call at 1-828-800-9880 or email us at info@podforhire.com. Pod for Hire. We take the work out of podcasting. But like now, I really want to see Ethan Hawke in the MCU like full time.
Yeah.
Full time.
Yeah, I mean, they can always recast him. I mean, they're recasting Mahershala as Blade, and he was Cottonmouth.
It's true, very true.
Good point. And let's not forget what's her name, who was also in Luke Cage, was in Civil War at the beginning. She's the one who shows Tony the picture of her dead son.
Yeah, Alfred.
Very good.
Alfred Woodard.
Alfred Woodard. Yeah.
God, I'm having a bad day with coming up with actors' names.
There was another one. Isn't there like a cast? Wasn't somebody in Eternals also in the first Captain Marvel?
Yes. The main actress, the Cersei. She played like the blue assassin girl who was on Jan Rog's team in Captain Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
She's like running around with the sniper rifle. That was her. But nice. That's easier to get away with. That was a small role. She was blue. Like, you know, that was easy. Plus, she completely characterized herself different, so she didn't even sound like the same person.
What again, all right, so we talked about episode length. There's only 6 episodes here. Is it confirmed that there's no season 2? Have they flat out confirmed that?
Well, they said that's not in the plans. Like, Oscar Isaac said whether we do another season at some point or he shows up in a movie, I'd be willing to come back. But Marvel didn't plan this to be multiple seasons like they did with Loki.
Hmm.
So we'll see.
The cool thing is they could have an Avengers team in the future or a hero or a team of heroes in some capacity suddenly end up in Egypt for one specific thing only, and they just bump into him. So it's not like it can't happen. That'd be nice to see.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Plus, he lives in London, right?
Well, he's from Chicago. That's where Mark is from.
But wasn't the museum that he was working at, wasn't that in London?
Yeah. Stevens lives in London, but Mark is from Chicago.
I just assumed because they showed him back in his apartment at the end that like that's where his home base would sort of be from that point forward. But now that Lockley's in the picture, who knows?
Yeah.
Like that's the one thing I really want more of, because it's like if we don't get more Moon Knight, then we're never going to get an answer to how big of a part of their personalities is Lockley. What has he been doing? Because there was at least 2 or 3 times during this series where something happened and then Mark and Steven were both confused. Like, was that you? No, that wasn't me.
Yep.
Right at the end, like we basically were screwed out of seeing how he got out of that situation and took down all of Harrow's guys. I understand why they did it from a storytelling standpoint, but you're also kind of like, I missed out on what's probably a really cool fight.
Yeah, he did it a few times. He did it when Steven first got into that fight with Harrow's followers, and he blacked out, and then he woke back up, and they were all dead. He killed that kid on a cliff, clearly. I think that was him at the end of episode 2 when he's in a hotel room drinking.
Plus,
Plus,
we saw the 3rd sarcophagus in the little insane asylum.
Yeah.
And they like never opened it, but it was shaking around. So that was clearly supposed to be him.
Oh,
sure.
He was talking to the Dr. Harold. One time it cut to them and he was sitting there with a bandage over his nose. I thought that was Lockley because when it cut back to Mark and Steven, neither of them had a bandage over their nose.
Very true. And why is he there? Why is there a need for a 3rd?
The way that I assumed that it went is that Mark put all of the good things in his life that he wanted to protect, like the way that he saw his mother, his love for Layla, all these other things, he put that in Steven and blocked them away. And all of the bad things about himself, like his, bloodlust and all those other things, he put them in the Lockley character.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm a sucker for this stuff continuing. I love the idea of these characters appearing over and over and over again. I don't know. I'd love to see him back. I mean, but I guess in my head, I'm just accepting the fact that nobody's really interested in moving forward. They've told their story and they're fine with that. I guess I'm just so accustomed to, hey, we saw Cap 10 years ago, we saw him 5 years ago, 4 years, and we just continue to see these men and women over and over and over again. But I mean, I think I'm okay with it having been just a one and done thing. But that at the same time, and I don't have a lot of beefs with this stuff, right? But one of the beefs I share with Chris here is that we were kind of robbed of the fight scene. There was he was dead, flat out dead. And I remember I looked at my wife. I said, "Well, what if they just freaking kill him?" Like I knew better. But all signs pointed to he's going to kill him now. And next thing you know, he blinks and the guy's dead. And you're like, what? That felt cheap. But another thing that kind of, I don't know. I don't mean to get too hung up on what my beef with this stuff is, but like, it just feels like little things like that. Like, Phil, I'll ask you before I go further, did you bump into that, the way that ended like that?
No, because I know they're saying we're not going to get another season, but I could easily see us getting another season. I feel like it's easier for me to accept us not getting another season of something like Hawkeye, because that just felt like a send-off to Clint's character. But I feel like there's enough here at the end of this show for them to revisit it.
And I guess this is where I was getting to when this idea of a beef that I may have with this stuff. This idea that something can happen in a certain country, and like as Chris said earlier, that there's no other heroes mentioned, no one shows up, no one cameos, there's no conversation whatsoever, not even one reference. Like, how does that happen in a world where heroes are everywhere? And no, it's not on anyone's radar. I guess you could say post Avengers, it would make sense. But like, is that why it makes sense? Because like stuff will happen in independent, or not independent, but solo Marvel films. You're like, wait a minute. How did other characters on the planet at this time not know about this? Which is, I don't know. I guess I personally bump into stuff like that. I don't know. It's almost like, are we going to get a reference to, hey, you know what happened in Egypt last week, man? That was crazy. Something like that. I don't know.
I mean, to me, it comes down to sometimes there's not enough time for anyone else to react. Like, for as resourceful as whoever is running the Avengers now might be, they can only get to Egypt so quickly.
Yeah.
Like teleportation is a really limited thing in Marvel. So like, it's that fight scene at the end was like 10 minutes. So by the time Ant-Man got his costume on and got on a plane, it'd be too late.
Yeah. I mean,
it's like It's like Thor the Dark World. Like, who else was going to be around in London? Like, we now know there was a bunch of Eternals there who were being lazy, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah, I think the best nod that they gave to there was a larger world of superheroes was the stuff with Layla when the kid was like, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" And she was like, "Yeah."
That was a nice little scene that could have easily felt forced and didn't to me. I liked that.
And who's she going to be later? Because that's immediately what I thought. Well, who's this going to grow up to be?
Yeah, I thought that was a very good scene. And
in 10 years, some actress will convince Kevin Feige to say that was her, just like Tom Holland did with Iron Man 2.
Sure.
Yeah, I thought it was a good scene, man. You could tell that the director is Egyptian because he put in a lot of stuff that felt authentic. And I felt like that exchange felt very real and genuine. And you could tell that came from the voice of somebody of that culture.
And the fact that they actually went out of their way to cast almost entirely Egyptian people for the roles of Egyptians was great. Like, that actress actually is Egyptian, playing Layla.
Yeah, and I mean, I felt like the way that they handled all of the stuff around Egyptian history and like all of the lore around it, I felt like they handled it very well. It didn't feel like they were, disrespecting anything or, making anything hammy. I really enjoy how different the show is. Even the choice of music is so different. I don't know, man. I feel like there's so much there for them to come back if they really want to.
I mean, in a world where, we just mentioned Ant-Man, in a world where Ant-Man has a third movie coming out, which is mind-blowing. And in a world where Ant-Man is a thing and has 3 movies, and, we're seeing characters that we never thought we'd see. And guys, here's something else. As we cover Moon Knight here, think of the multitude of characters that we have yet to see that have never been mentioned, but that could be introduced either on the streaming service or on the big screen. It is overwhelming at times. Just the sheer weight of the Marvel Universe on paper and how much material they have to work with for the next 20 years or more. And not even really repeat themselves that often at all. It's mind blowing, dude.
I mean, they haven't even gotten to the X-Men or the Fantastic Four, like MCU proper, that is. Like, there's still...
MCU proper.
Yeah, there's so much ground for them to cover. And we know we're already starting to see, like, these younger versions of heroes. So, like, we're getting Riri Williams, who's basically going to be Ironheart. She's going to sort of take over for Rhodey and Tony once they're gone. And there's a lot of people who seem to think the kid from Iron Man 3 might end up becoming a sort of pseudo Iron Man at some point, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily a plan.
Yeah, I mean, he signed a multi-movie deal, so I assumed he'd be back.
That kid did?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's one of those things with Marvel, like, you sign a deal and then they might or might not use you. Like, Portman had more movies left on her deal when they originally let her out.
I love that Portman was like, I'm done after this movie. And they were like, hey, do you want to play Thor? And she was like, yes.
Marvel is much like when she left, Marvel was big, but Marvel's huge now. Yeah. Everybody wants a little bit of that Marvel rub. And she's like, hey, if you guys are giving me a big hammer to throw around, then fuck, I'll come back.
Yeah, I'm sure she was looking around like, do I want to run around and be like a damsel in distress for the whole movie and drop cheesy lines like, oh my God? No. But if you're going to let me be like one of the main characters in the movie, sure.
Oh, and how good did she look in that trailer too? Like that 2 seconds when they have her catching the hammer. It's like, ooh, she put on some muscle.
Yeah. I like the way you said that. That's good. Yeah, man, that's going to be good. I can't wait to cover that whenever it gets here. So we've roundabout covered this, and I've told you guys what I think. Flat out, Chris, are you good with this being it from Moon Knight? Would you like to see a season 2 and see Jake Lockley's story explored, or do you think it's okay that they stop here? If you had a preference, what is it?
I mean, I would prefer we get more, but I'm not going to cry over not getting more.
What do you think, Phil?
I would really like to see another season. Even if it's not another season, I think that Moon Knight should show up somewhere else. I don't know. Even if we get like some weird version of like the MI comics that they were doing with Captain Britain and Moon Knight's in that, I'd be interested in that. Just use him again in some way. It would be, to me, a huge waste to not use Oscar Isaac again.
Oh, you know, I did that little rant about the multitude of characters this universe has. Dude, Captain Britain, dude.
Yeah, they've got a ton of UK characters that they can use.
Yes. Oh my God, Captain Britain. I was amazed. Did anyone else collect Excalibur when it first hit? Because I did. Like it was Alan Davis and Chris Claremont worked on it. It was so good, that book.
Yeah, I mean, man, that's what's so crazy about them not doing anything X-Men related. There's so many X-Men spinoffs.
Mm-hmm. They're waiting. Chris mentioned X-Men earlier. They're waiting for that. They're waiting to do it at the right time.
Yeah, and I feel like they're waiting for Ryan Reynolds to be ready because he was taking a little break from acting before he does Deadpool 3.
Mm-hmm.
And Deadpool 3, they've already kind of confirmed will be MCU. So It feels like at some point we're going to get the introduction of the concept of mutants. And then maybe we get Deadpool before we get a full-on X-Men thing, but I don't think it'll be too much longer because Ryan Reynolds isn't going to be playing Deadpool when he's 60.
Yeah, remember when people were acting like, oh man, Deadpool's too violent. They're not going to bring him to Marvel and Disney. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much out the window now. Punisher's on Disney Plus. It's happening.
Oh, yeah. And you could listen. You could. I submit. You could still do. I was going to say Daredevil. You could still do Deadpool, and it doesn't have to be rated R. I'm not saying sanitize it, but I think that his humor works whether he's cursing a streak and making lewd gestures or not. Because I think he's just that funny. I think it would still work.
Did either of you watch the Deadpool 2 PG-13 cut they released with the Fred Savage scenes inserted?
Yes.
I thought it was fine. It worked.
I did too.
And the Fred Savage
Yeah.
stuff, just the whole Princess Bride parody. I mean, Princess Bride that's one of those movies that like really captured my attention as a child, and I've carried that through to adulthood. I love that movie so much. And just having him come in and recreate it, and they got the set perfect, and he's wearing the same Bears shirt. Like, I loved it so much.
Oh, so awesome. And you know what? I could suddenly I'm envisioning Reynolds in the Deadpool costume interacting with Hemsworth, and Deadpool's looking at you, looking at the camera, and Hemsworth gets nose to nose and says, "Who are you looking at? Who are you looking at right now? What are you doing?" Like, I would love to see something like that. Like, Deadpool's attempting to break the fourth wall, but there is no fourth wall. Like, it's not real. It's just him being crazy, you know. Oh yeah.
They've got to do that. They've got to do that issue of Amazing Spider-Man where they both trade your mama jokes. That would be amazing.
And you know, I'm sorry if you get Reynolds. You've got, I know Jackman's done. I get it. I mean, for him to get back in Wolverine shape, I mean, you're asking a lot. You're asking a lot. It's like when remember the Undertaker first walked away from full time, but he still came back and had incredible matches year after year after year until he didn't. Like, he would train the entire year to get himself, number one, back in shape. Number two, to get himself mentally and physically ready. And then he came in and he stole the show at WrestleMania. Like, oh my God, this guy still got it. I mean, I can't imagine what it would take, the conditioning, the diet, the determination, the willpower, which Hugh Jackman has all those things more, right? But in order to portray this character for any extended period of time, it's a lot of work, I'm sure. I mean, well, he won't invest that kind of time, but how do you do Reynolds as Deadpool and not have Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in some capacity?
Yeah, I personally think Hugh Jackman is done with the character. I don't see him coming back. And I also think that they should distance themselves as much as possible from the Fox X-Men franchises. And that's not me saying that because I don't like them or anything. I just feel like they should try to do something different because I feel like the audience is ready for something different.
So like we all know the one guy that's coming up, right? From the Fox X-Men stuff. Like, can we talk about that? Because it was in the
I don't know if we can because
it was in the trailer though. Like,
oh, I see. Sure, I know about that.
So Patrick Stewart, we're obviously getting a Patrick Stewart cameo. Mm-hmm. It was like they revealed it in the trailer. Like, and to me, that means they're hiding bigger things.
Yep.
So that's the one person I'm willing to make the exception for. Like, Patrick Stewart basically defined that role in live action.
Oh, yeah.
So using him again as a variant, he doesn't even have to be the mainline MCU Xavier. He could just be a variant. But have you guys seen who everybody seems to want to play Wolverine?
I keep seeing Daniel Radcliffe.
Yes, Daniel Radcliffe. Harry friggin' Potter.
Why not? He looks great.
I mean, first of all, he's got the right height to be an actual accurate Wolverine.
Yep.
But will he do the body transformation thing? Because Radcliffe is one of those guys that, like, he just likes to make fun projects now. I don't know if he wants to put in a year in the gym and eating nothing but steamed chicken and broccoli to get that body like Chris Hemsworth does every time. Like,
I will counter that with a question of my own. How much longer do you think people are going to do the body transformations now that Pattinson didn't do it for Batman and pretty much proved that you don't have to?
Well, Pattinson was in great shape for the Batman, and he did an interview recently where he's like, I never should have made a joke about stopping going to the gym because I really screwed myself because everybody believed me. But they just didn't show him shirtless all the time. Like, he was in great shape though. But I feel like for a character like Wolverine, you have to go in one of two directions. You make him the stocky, almost chubby Wolverine that we've seen in many versions in the comics, or you make him the super jacked version that we've seen in the cartoons and with Hugh Jackman. It's got to be one or the other. I don't think we can have like a a skinny Wolverine. Like Hugh Jackman, if you go back and watch that first X-Men movie, is not that big in the first movie.
No, he's not.
And if you go back and rewatch it now, it feels weird. Like he looks too small to be Wolverine, because Wolverine's supposed to just be this like short, angry ball of muscle.
Yeah, he's always too tall for me. That's always the drawback to his Wolverine. He's just too tall.
That's the only thing I think Radcliffe has going in his favor is he's like 5'8" or 5'9". Like he's not tall.
I think he could pull it off. I think he's a good actor. I think he could pull it off. And I'm not here. All right. So look, I was never really in the back for the Harry Potter stuff. I didn't care about it then. I don't care about it now. That's just me. I just never was a fan. And so because I'm really not a fan, I guess I can see him as other things where if you followed all the movies and collectively you really enjoyed them, I could maybe see where someone would say, nope, that's not him. He's not Wolverine. But for me, I'm enough detached from that. I can say, no, I think you did great.
They made Cedric Diggory Batman. Come on. Let's just do it.
That's true. That's true. And yeah, there's a couple other actors from that franchise who've probably appeared in superhero things, I would imagine. Maybe not as like main characters, but.
Oh, you know what? I've got a way to tie this back. If we're talking about the upcoming and kids, depending on when this is released, it probably will be the next episode, actually, to make it timely. Doctor Strange is hitting theaters this weekend as of this recording. And we know multiverse, blah, blah, blah. There's a world in which you could do Moon Knight and it doesn't have to be Oscar Isaac. I don't mean tomorrow or next year, but if he decided he didn't want to come back, you could do it and just say he's from somewhere else. I mean, all bets are off now for everything. Once you establish the multiverse as you did in Spider-Man, you are saying, okay, now we can do anything, right? You can change horses at any time, right? It doesn't matter now.
I guess it kind of depends on what they do with it in the season 2 of Loki and Doctor Strange. Like, it really feels like they're going to try and tie up some of those ends, which means we might not see a bunch of variant stuff moving forward. That might just be like a phase 4 kind of deal. But I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do with Loki season 2, because obviously all that is going to be impacted by what happens in Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. And they've said as much. It's even the guy who wrote Doctor Strange, this current one, The Multiverse of Madness, is now the new like head writer / showrunner for Loki season 2.
Nice.
So there's going to be some kind of crossover carryover of the story there. I'm really interested to see how they do it though, because they ended Loki on such a strange note that they sort of have to pick up from there, you know?
Nice. Good Lord, you hear that? Evil Knievel outside my damn door. Yes, yours is bigger than everyone's. Congratulations. Christ almighty. I'll be sure to edit that thing out. Yeah, let's see. 40. Okay, I keep notes. I got to find a way to put this back together for the show here. Let's see. All right, sorry about that. Here we go. Well, so yeah, we'll see how they handle the multiverse. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm kind of in favor of keeping the door cracked a little. I'm not saying they shouldn't attempt to shut it. I'm sure they will attempt to shut it in terms of storyline and whatnot. But Phil, I'm okay if the door's cracked a little bit. It leaves the room and opportunity for surprises along the way. I mean, it'd be cool to see and fun actually for stuff to just randomly pop up occasionally. It doesn't have to be nonstop intense, like too much in one film or anything, but just to randomly see characters show up and say, "Oh my God, that's so and so." That'd be crazy fun to see, man.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think that they should still do multiverse stuff here and there, but I do think like the blip, at some point they don't have to reference it as much. Like I do think that was one of the more refreshing things about the show. They never talk about the blip at all in the show, and that's after every single property mentioned the blip in some way.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, it really wasn't a factor at all. And I remember either Ethan Hawke or Oscar Isaac said in an interview that they talked to Kevin Feige and confirmed that their character was not blipped. but that's like irrelevant. Because the show makes no mention of it.
And when does the show even take place? Do we even know that? You know what I'm saying? Because it's not dated at all inside the show, is it?
No,
this they don't really. I mean, apart from the wardrobe, 2027 for them,
something like that.
Because they're 5 years ahead. Yeah, they're 5 years ahead because of the time passage in Avengers. So, well, yeah, I personally would like to see the show come back. I can understand if it doesn't. I'm okay with it if it doesn't. But I'm a fan of these characters in this story. I'd love to see them come back and see, and who would be the villain next time? Who knows? Who would they keep going down the road of the Egyptian god, or would they try something different? I don't know.
The whole premise of Thor is that Gore is going around trying to kill all the gods.
Ooh.
So I wonder if there's a possibility of maybe an Egyptian god cameo in there somewhere.
Nice. I like that. Yeah. See, we're sitting here trying to tie this all back together. That's what we do. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us here, kids. Whether or not it comes back, who's to say, who's to know? But for what it is, for what it was, I really enjoyed it. I'm not incredibly high on the last episode, but I'm not incredibly down on it either. I'm somewhere in between, I guess. But the effects, the acting makes this show what it is. And I'm a fan of this show. Phil, what say you? What is your last word on Moon Knight?
Man, I think it's a good show. I think the amount of character stuff and just the attention to detail that they managed to cram in just 6 episodes. Like there's so many things that I noticed after the fact in episode 6. Like, for example, that Mark's brother was drawing a goldfish before he died, and that was the whole connection of why he had a goldfish in his room all the time. And why it only had one fin. Stuff like him being in Egypt, and when Mark is walking around, he had the Cubs hat on because he's from Chicago. It's just it's so many really small nods in there where it's like if you blink, you missed it.
Yeah, very good, very good. Lots of stuff. Yeah, you're right. Lots of little stuff to catch, and if you don't pay attention, you'll miss them. Chris, what do you think, man? What's your last word on Moon Knight?
I mean, I definitely recommend people watch it if they haven't. I think it's not required viewing, obviously, because it feels very disconnected from everything else, but it's well worth your time. Everybody is doing a great job with this, from everything from the art department on down to the writing, and the acting was fantastic. And if my biggest complaint is that the show left me wanting more, then that's still a success in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this it's a great way to end it, man. This thing's a hit, whether they do anything else, whether or not. It's funny because on this show before, we talked about the idea that these days we just don't ever expect a solo movie. We never expect a movie to just be one and done ever, because the way things are now. And I guess for me, that's how I looked at this. I don't expect this to be just one season, but I mean, maybe it will be. Well, I mean, who knows? We'll find out together, I guess. But yeah, this is, if you're a Marvel fan, kids, you will enjoy this. If you're a fan of really, really good acting and a really good story, you're going to like this as well. The action's on point. There's a real story to these characters. They're not very one-dimensional at all. There's some pretty deep stuff going on here, folks, and I think it's well worth your time. Whether or not this character shows up in any form or fashion moving forward remains to be seen, but hopefully he will. We'll just wait and see how it goes. But in the meantime, that is Moon Knight. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.